Have you ever lost someone so deeply, you stopped believing they could still be alive somewhere? Now imagine standing in the cold wind of a dusty prairie, only to hear a small voice ask, "Can you buy us, Mr.?" A little girl, a baby in her arms, and behind them, a woman shackled for auction. What if that woman had the same face as the one you thought had died years ago? Would you walk away or reach into the ashes of your past to save what was once your world? This is not a story of heroes with shining guns. It is a story of choices made in quiet moments, of love once lost, of pain carried in silence, and of one man who chose to believe. Again, stay with us in the winds of Dry Hollow. You may remember something your heart once buried. The wind in Dry Hollow did not howl. It whispered, dry and low. It crawled through the wooden bones of the trading post like it knew every corner, knew every deal, every lie. The dust moved slow across the planks, like it too was tired. Elias Munro stepped off his saddle. His boots hit the ground with a dull thud. The sun was sharp that morning, no clouds, just heat and memory. He had come only for a horse, not trouble, not people. Definitely not the past. The market smelled like sweat and dry grain, old leather, burned coffee. A few traders leaned against wagons, hats tipped low, others muttered near the stalls. Livestock shifted in pens. Someone coughed. No one looked up until she spoke. "Can you buy us, Mr.?" The voice was not louder than a breath, but Elias heard it, clear as a bell. He turned his head. A little girl stood no more than 5 paces away. Her hair was matted at the ends. Her dress was patched with cloth that did not match. Her cheeks were streaked with dust. She could not have been more than 6. In her arms, wrapped in a thin blue quilt, a baby blinked slow against the sun. She did not smile. She just looked up. "We will not cry," she said. Elias felt the air shift. He could not place the feeling. Something old stirred in his chest, something he had not named in years. He looked at the child, then past her. A wooden platform sat at the far edge of the square. 4 boards high, wide enough for 2 men to stand shoulder to shoulder. But only one person stood there, a woman. Her hands were bound in front of her, a gray shawl wrapped around her shoulders, frayed and sun-bleached. Her chin was low, her back straight. She said nothing. Her silence was not empty. It was heavy, as if every word she might say had been used up. The girl followed his eyes. "That is my mama," she whispered. "They said she owes too much, so they are taking us." "To?" Elias frowned. "Who said?" She looked toward a man in a brown vest near the platform. He held a ledger, wore polished boots, no dust on his coat. "They did." The auctioneer cleared his throat. He raised a hammer. "Next listing. Woman, capable, compliant, comes with 2 dependents, all for 1 payment. Starting bid, $20. Someone chuckled. "She barely looks alive," a voice said. "10 if you throw in the kids." Elias stepped forward. His voice was calm, firm. 30. The crowd quieted. A second voice rose. 40. Elias did not pause. 60. Silence. The hammer fell. "Sold." He walked toward the platform. Dust kicked up with every step. He handed the coins over without a word. The girl stepped down first. She did not wait to be told. The baby in her arms stirred but did not cry. She walked beside Elias, as if she had known him all her life. The woman moved slowly, her feet bare, ankles scraped. She stepped off the platform, head still bowed. No one spoke, not the trader, not the auctioneer, not the crowd. They passed through the edge of the square like shadows. Outside the town, near a patch of brittle sagebrush, Elias stopped. The wind was soft here. He turned to the girl. "What is your name?" "Josie," she said. "My brother is Ellis." Elias nodded. Then he looked to the woman. "Ma'am," he said, quiet and steady, "I need to see your face." The woman did not speak. She stood still for a long time. Then slowly, her fingers moved. She pulled the shawl back from her head. The light touched her skin, and Elias felt his knees weaken. The curve of her jaw, the line of her mouth, a faded scar beneath one eye. Years had changed her, but not enough. He swallowed hard. "Lila," he said. She looked up at him, and then her legs gave out. Elias caught her, his arms locked around her, as if letting go would undo everything. He did not speak again. Not yet. The wind moved through the grass, and somewhere behind them, the town kept going, but not for them, not anymore. Elias Monroe had once been a man people remembered. They recalled his voice during summer auctions. His tone was steady, his words few, but well placed. They remembered the way he laughed, his head thrown back, his shoulders loose. He had a way of standing that said he belonged wherever he was. But the man he had become was quieter. That change came after Lila disappeared. It had been 7 winters now. 7 long seasons since she left to trade for supplies and never returned. The news came fast, but with little detail: a broken wheel, a missing horse, no wagon, no sign of struggle, only silence. Town folks whispered. Some said bandits, others said worse. No one ever found her. Elias dug a small grave beside the creek. It was empty, but he buried something there. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was the sound of her voice. He did not cry. He nailed her name on a wooden plank. Then he walked home, locked the bedroom, and never opened it again. The cabin became his world, a structure of wood and shadow. It sat where the land rolled low before the red ridge. Wind moved through the boards with a soft moan, like it missed her too. He lived in rhythm with the sun, up before dawn, coffee at first light. Chores until his back ached, then the long evenings, alone. Each night, he lit a lamp on the shelf near the window, one match, one flame. Then he sat in the same chair, his gaze fixed on the hills she once called painted dreams. He did not speak her name again, not aloud, but he heard it in his chest, where memory holds its sharpest edges. He told himself she was gone. He told himself to stop looking, but he never really did. Now, as they walked toward that same cabin, Elias felt a tremor inside him, not from fear, from recognition. Josie kept a tight grip on her baby brother, Ellis. The child did not fuss, his breath soft against her shoulder. The girl's steps were careful but sure. Her eyes moved with quiet intelligence. She never looked back. Lila followed behind. Her pace was slow, her shoulders held firm, even when her legs faltered. She had not said a word since she collapsed into Elias's arms. He had not asked for one. Some things did not need immediate answers. When they reached the cabin, the porch groaned beneath the weight of time. Elias opened the door without a sound. He stepped aside to let them in first. The air inside was dry, clean. It smelled of cedar and ash. Not much had changed. Josie stopped just past the doorway. Her eyes scanned the room. She looked at the lantern still burning low in the corner. Then the pictures on the wall, worn from years of sun. "This place feels quiet," she said. Elias nodded. "It has been quiet for a long while." He moved to the stove, poured water into a kettle, set it over the flame, Then he reached for a cloth-wrapped loaf of bread. It was not fresh, but not yet hard. He placed it on the table without a word. Lila sat near the window. She unwrapped Ellis and cradled him close. Her hands moved in slow, practiced ways. She did not glance at Elias, but her body spoke of someone who had carried weight longer than she should. Josie found a spot near the hearth. She sat cross-legged, her hands folded in her lap, not afraid, just still. Elias leaned against the counter. His eyes watched the fire flicker on the pot, watched the way light danced on Lila's cheek, watched the shadow of her hair fall across her shoulder. So much had changed, and yet it had not. He cleared his throat. That day, when they said you were gone, Lila did not turn. She looked at the floor. They lied, she said. Her voice was soft. It barely moved the air. Elias said nothing more. He felt his jaw tighten. He looked back at the stove. The kettle had not yet whistled. The room held its breath. Later, after the bread was eaten and the children asleep, Elias stepped outside. The stars hung low over the ridge. The wind had quieted, just a soft hum through the dry grass. He stood by the porch rail, ran his hand over a worn notch in the wood. He had carved it during a sleepless night, long ago, when he still thought she might come back. Behind him, a floorboard creaked. He did not turn. Lila stood there, close, but not too close. Her voice came like wind moving through pine. I was not supposed to survive. Elias did not answer right away. I waited, he said, even when I said I would not. They stood there a while. The night wrapped around them. No questions, no demands, just silence and something else. The beginning of breath. The morning came hard and dry hollow. Sunlight cut through the cracks of the shutters and stretched across the cabin floor like sharp lines on weathered hide. Elias Monroe sat at the edge of the table, his hands folded, his eyes fixed on nothing. The night had passed slow. In the other room, it was quiet. He had heard the soft breathing of Ellis, the rustle of Josie turning in her sleep, once, maybe twice. A whisper from Lila that never rose high enough to reach his ears. The fire in the hearth was now just ash and faint orange glow. A pot of coffee had gone cold before the rooster ever called. Elias had not touched it. He had not moved since the first light crossed the window pane. The face of Lila lingered in his mind. Not the woman from years ago, not the memory from under moonlight by the barn, but the one from yesterday. Tired, scarred, brave in a way he could not name. He had buried her, not with stone, not with wood, but deep inside, in a place where no sound could reach. And now she was here, alive, and with children. He stood, pushing back the chair slow. His boots met the floor with a familiar thud. He crossed the room and stepped onto the porch. The wind met him, dry and full of dust. He walked to the edge of the fence line. The rails sagged in places. One post leaned too far forward. He rested his hand on it. The fields ahead were still. The ridge behind the cabin caught the light in soft gold. He thought about the day Lila disappeared. She had left on horseback with a list of supplies and a promise to return by the second evening. When she did not come back, he had searched. He rode for miles, asked every man and woman from here to Pine Flats, but there had been nothing. No sign, no trace, no Lila. He had built a box from pine, placed wildflowers inside, and buried it near the creek, not for her body, but for the pieces of himself he could no longer carry. Behind him, the cabin door creaked. Josie stepped out, careful not to wake her brother. She stood still for a moment, then walked toward him. You're up early, she said. Elias nodded. Old habit. She looked toward the field. Her arms still held Ellis close. The baby stirred, but stayed asleep. Mama said you built this place yourself. Every nail. She said the front room was hers once. It still is. Josie shifted her weight. Did you know her before? Elias glanced down, then nodded. A long time ago, before you were born. The girl looked at him, her eyes searching. She says I look like her. But some say I have your eyes. Elias crouched beside her. Do you want to know what I see? Josie did not speak, but she gave the smallest nod. I see someone strong, like your mama. I see someone who watches before they speak. Someone who carries more than most should. He paused. That looks like me, too. Josie blinked. A softness crossed her face. She told me I came during a storm, that the wind shook the house. Elias smiled faintly. That sounds right. Josie stepped back toward the porch. Do you think she will stay this time? Elias looked at the cabin, the door still open, the warmth inside reaching out into the morning air. I think she wants to. They walked back together. Inside, Lila sat near the hearth. Her hair was brushed now, tied loosely at the back. She looked different in the daylight, not softer, just clearer, like seeing something through glass after the fog lifts. Elias stood in the doorway. Lila met his eyes. She asked if you remembered me, Lila said. I never forgot. She looked away. I was not sure you would want to remember. He took a step closer. I need to ask. She nodded once. Is Josie mine? Lila looked toward the girl, who now sat on the floor near the fire. Yes. The word hung in the air like smoke. Elias felt his breath shift, not faster, just deeper. I knew, he said, not in the mind, but in the blood. Lila adjusted the blanket around Ellis. Her fingers worked slow, steady. She has your quiet, your way of listening. Elias sat across from her. The fire warmed the space between them. You do not owe me anything, he said. Lila shook her head. I do not have much to give, but I owe you the truth. She looked at the fire. After the horse threw me, I walked until my feet bled. A wagon picked me up. A man promised help, but he lied. He took my name, my words, my choices. When I gave birth, he hid me deeper. He said we were debts unpaid. Elias clenched his fists. He is gone now, died last year. But his lies stayed behind. They sold us to settle accounts. That is how we ended up at that market. She paused. That is not the worst of it, but it is what I can speak for now. Elias leaned forward. You spoke enough. She looked up. You believe me, he nodded. Always. A long silence passed. Then Lila whispered, I did not know if you would still be kind. Elias replied, voice low. I had to hold on to something. Kindness was all I had left. The fire cracked. Ellis stirred. Josie hummed something under her breath, and for the first time in years, Elias did not feel alone. The days that followed came slow. The cabin, once silent, now breathed with small sounds. The shuffle of bare feet on wood, the soft coo of Ellis in the early morning, the scrape of firewood being stacked by the door, and above all, the steady hum of things long forgotten. Lila moved through the house like someone relearning the weight of safety. She spoke little, but her presence filled the corners. When she touched the kettle or folded a blanket, she did it with care, as if she had once lived in a world where care was not allowed. Elias watched her from the porch most mornings. He would drink his coffee in silence, hat low against the sun, and listen to the wind moving through the brush. Sometimes she would glance his way, sometimes not. He did not push. Josie had taken to the porch steps. She sat there often, knees tucked to her chest, watching the horizon as if waiting for something only she understood. One morning, just after sunrise, she stepped up beside Elias without a word. He offered her a seat. She sat, hands in her lap. Her dress was patched again, one side slightly shorter than the other. "Do you believe in second chances?" she asked. Elias turned to her. "That depends," he said. "On what the first one cost." Josie nodded slowly. "I asked Mama that. She said some chances never really go away. They just get quiet, like the sky before it rains." Elias looked out toward the ridge. "She always had words for things I did not." Josie played with a thread at her sleeve. "I think Ellis likes you." Elias smiled, faint. "He is a quiet judge." She chuckled once, then turned serious. "Do you think it is okay to want someone to be your father, even if they were not there at the start?" Elias did not answer right away. He let the words sit between them. Then he spoke. "I think wanting something good is never wrong. And I think love has more to do with showing up now than it does with being there before." Josie nodded, her eyes damp but steady. "I thought so." She stood and went inside. Elias remained. His chest ached, not with pain, but with the weight of something new. Later that day, Elias walked down to the creek. It had thinned in summer, but still ran cold across the stones. He crouched by the water, scooped some into his hands, and let it drip through his fingers. The wind moved across the surface, breaking the reflection. He stared at his face. The lines had grown deeper. His beard held more silver than sand now. His hands, once strong and fast, carried the stiffness of time. He saw himself, but also something else: responsibility. He had not held a child since Lila disappeared, had not thought about cradling one, teaching one, protecting one. Now, there was Josie. Now, there was Ellis and Lila, the woman he had buried without ever knowing the truth. He stood and made his way back up the trail. As he neared the cabin, he heard voices, Lila and Josie. The words were soft, muffled by the walls. "He does not have to say it. Mama, I know he cares." Then silence. Then Lila's voice. Lower. "Just give him time. He lost things too." That night, the table was set with care. Elias sat across from Lila. Josie helped feed Ellis mashed carrots with the edge of a wooden spoon. The baby gurgled, content. Lila ate slowly, her hands steady again. When the meal ended, Elias stayed behind to clean. He wiped the table, scrubbed the pot. His hands moved without thought. Lila watched him. "You are different," she said. Elias looked at her. "How?" "You do not just carry the weight anymore. You share it." He considered that. Maybe I had forgotten how. She stood, walked over, and placed a folded cloth beside him. "You are remembering." When night came, Elias sat on the porch again. Josie came out with a bundle of paper. She sat beside him, held out a page. It was a drawing. 3 figures, one tall, one with a braid, one small, holding the hand of the tall one. Beneath, in uneven writing, it said, "This is my real family." Elias took the paper, held it in both hands. He swallowed hard. "You drew this," Josie nodded. "And I meant it." He reached out, placed a hand gently on her head. "You are brave." Josie leaned against him, said nothing. Inside, Lila rocked Ellis near the hearth, and the quiet was no longer empty. The wind came soft that morning, not sharp, not restless, just enough to move the curtains near the open window. Elias stood in the doorway of the back room, one hand resting on the frame. He did not speak, did not want to break the stillness. Josie lay on the cot, curled beneath a woven blanket. Her breathing was steady. A book rested beside her, pages bent at the corner. In her arms, Ellis shifted but did not wake. Lila sat nearby, mending a torn sleeve. Her fingers moved with rhythm, years of habit, of necessity. She looked up when she saw Elias. She stayed up too long reading. She said. Elias nodded. She dreams loud. Lila smiled faintly. She always does, even in silence. He stepped inside, his boots quiet on the worn planks. As he bent down to check the fire in the corner stove, something caught his eye. A small shape, dark, round, just beneath Josie's left ear, a freckle. His breath caught. It was not just any mark. It was the same shape, same place, a small brown dot, almost hidden in the crease of the neck. He touched the side of his own neck. Same spot, same freckle. Lila noticed the change in his face. What is it? She asked. Elias shook his head, but then he stepped closer. He looked again. Not once, not twice. He needed to be sure, and he was. He sat down slowly, the old chair creaking beneath his weight. His hands trembled slightly. He pressed them together, trying to still the shaking. That mark, he said. Lila paused. Her needle stopped. She looked at him, eyes calm, tired. I know. Elias leaned forward. When did you know the day she was born? You never told me. I never had the chance. He nodded. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. She is mine, he said. Lila did not answer with words. She nodded once, slow, certain. Elias looked at Josie. Her hair had fallen across her cheek. She looked peaceful, safe. I did not get to see her first steps, he said. Did not hear her first word. Did not hold her when she cried. Lila spoke softly. But you can now. He closed his eyes for a long moment. I do not know how. You start by being there. Later that day, while Josie helped Lila with the laundry outside, Elias sat alone on the porch. He held the drawing Josie had given him the night before. 3 figures. Underneath, this is my real family. He traced the lines with his finger. The freckle had opened something inside him, not just the knowledge of blood, but a memory of what it meant to belong, to be seen, to be needed. When Josie came back up the hill, carrying a bucket of water, he stood and met her halfway. Let me take that, he said. She hesitated, then handed it to him. They walked together toward the porch. As they reached the steps, he turned to her. There is something we share. She looked up. What is it? He pointed to his neck. Right here. Josie touched the same spot on hers. I always wondered about that. Elias smiled. It runs in the family. Josie's eyes widened. She said nothing, but her hand found his and held it. That night, as the stars settled low over the ridge, Elias sat beside the hearth. Lila handed him Ellis. He cradled the child gently. The baby blinked up at him and smiled. Elias felt something shift, not break, but mend. For the first time in years, he whispered something he had not dared say. Thank you for coming home. Lila sat beside him. I never wanted to leave. He looked at her. I know that now. In the quiet that followed, the family breathed as one, not loud, not perfect, but whole. The stillness of the afternoon was broken by hooves on dry earth. Elias looked up from the barn. His hand gripped the wooden rail a little tighter. Dust rose on the ridge beyond the pasture. 3 riders approached, slow and wide across the trail, like wolves that knew they had time. Lila stepped onto the porch, Ellis on her hip. Josie followed close behind, clutching a worn cloth doll. Elias turned toward them. "Get inside," he said. Lila did not argue. She knew the tone. It was not fear. It was warning. Inside the cabin, she closed the shutters. Her hands moved without tremble, but her breath came shorter. Josie sat with Ellis, quiet, watching their mother. Outside. Elias walked to the front gate. The riders halted 10 yards from the fence. The man in the middle wore a dark coat, too fine for the dust. His boots gleamed beneath the grit. His face carried the smug calm of someone used to signing names over lives. He spoke first. "You, Elias Monroe, I am. You have something that belongs to my employer." Elias did not move. "And who is that?" The man dismounted, brushed dirt from his sleeves. "Name is Luther Cade. Owns contracts, debts, labor rights. You might call it business." Elias looked past him. The other 2 men shifted in their saddles. Their eyes never stopped scanning the cabin. Elias said, "I call it selling people." The man smiled. "Well, that is a cold way to say it, but sure." She was purchased, she and the children, part of a settlement when her husband passed owing. Elias stepped closer to the fence. "She is not property." The smile faded. "That is not your decision." Elias kept his voice level. She was taken, used, sold, without rights or choice. The man pulled a folded paper from his coat, legal documents, debt transfer, signed by a judge in Bent Tree County. Elias did not take the paper. I have seen real papers, and I have seen lies made to look like law. Luther Cade narrowed his eyes. "I suggest you think before you refuse. Harboring debt fugitives comes with penalty." Elias looked at the cabin. He knew they were listening. He spoke louder. "They are not fugitives. They are my family." A pause. Luther chuckled once. "Do not tell me you plan to fight this, old man. The law is on our side." Elias reached to his belt. Slowly, calm. He did not draw his weapon. He just rested his hand on the handle. "Then you will need more than words next time you come." The riders shifted again, uneasy. Cade's voice turned sharp. "This is not over." "No," Elias said. "It is just beginning." The men turned. Dust followed them down the trail. Inside the cabin, Lila held Ellis close, her back against the wall. Josie sat beside her, still as stone. Elias entered slowly. His eyes met Lila's. She asked one word. "Cade." He nodded. Her shoulders dropped. "I knew he would come." Elias sat on the edge of the table. "They brought papers, claimed you were sold again." Lila clenched her jaw. "They forged everything. They always do." "I believe you," Josie whispered. "What happens now?" Elias looked at her. "We do not run." Outside, the sky turned dark with wind. Not yet storm, but close. Morning came again to Dry Hollow. The wind had died back. Sunlight cooled. It came soft through the shutters. Elias Monroe sat at the table. He sharpened a pocket knife. The metal hummed under his whetstone. Sparks of metal on wood. He had not slept well. The threat from Luther Cade lingered. His eyes stayed heavy. His hands kept moving, even after the knife was sharp. Lila stood near the window. She held Ellis close. The baby stirred, then nestled into her shoulder. She looked small against the wall, but she was steady. She wore a simple dress, clean now. her hair brushed smooth, the old quilt draped across her lap. Josie entered last. She had tied her hair back. She stepped around the table and lifted the pot of coffee. Steam floated up. She set it down carefully. "Thank you," Lila said. Elias wiped the blade and set it down. He reached for his cup. "Black." She nodded. He drank. The warmth came slow. "You are going today," he said. Lila looked at him. "I am," she said. "Need something from my chest by the door." "No," she said. "Just your belief." He found her eye. "You have it." They stepped out together. Elias carried Ellis. Josie walked beside them. The trail to Bent Tree County could have been shorter, but they opted for safety. They brought horses. Lila rode quietly. Elias led the mare, holding supplies. In the pack, food, water, a folded note from his mouth. They reached the town after midday. Bent Tree County was small. A courthouse sat at its center. 2 floors built of brick and timber. A single flag flew above. It looked worn. The square was empty. No vendors, no chatter. They tied the horses outside. Elias waited at the door. Lila placed a hand on his arm. He nodded. They entered the lobby. 2 deputies sat behind a desk. One stood and approached. The taller one introduced himself. "Sheriff Mallory," he said. He offered his hand. Solid grip, no smile. "Elias Monroe and family." He asked. "Yes." Elias said. "The lady is Lila Monroe." "That is me," Lila answered. The sheriff motioned to a door down the hall. When they reached it, they paused. Lila swept a hand across her chest. "Here goes everything." She pushed open the door. A wooden desk, papers scattered, a clerk, folding papers, light through a high window. The sheriff sat behind the desk. He examined a file. He looked at Lila. "Mrs. Monroe," he said, "we received your complaint, your testimony." Lila sat in the chair. She pressed her back against the edge. Her hands rested on her lap. She folded them. Elias stood to the side. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Your testimony will be sworn. It will become part of the record. Tell me what you saw, what you endured." Lila inhaled deep. "I was taken after my horse fell during dust storm. I was injured. A man came. He said he was a friend. He offered water. But he took me instead. I woke weeks later on a small farm. That man said I owed debt. He said I was worthless. He forced me to work without pay. Not just me. My children, too." She paused. Her voice quiet. She looked at the sheriff. "He owned me, and when I could no longer pay, he sold us, traded us to pay his debts. And last week, he died. Then his debts came for me." The sheriff nodded. He wrote notes. He tapped a pencil. Lila continued. "I was treated like property. But I am not property. I am a woman, a mother, and I want my name back." Her voice did not crack, but tears welled. The room stayed still. She sat tall. Josie watched from the door. Elias held Ellis in one arm. The baby dozed. Elias felt his throat tighten. He saw pride in Lila's eyes, and fear too. The sheriff closed the file. He looked at Lila. "You have courage," he said. "You spoke truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. That speaks volume." Lila nodded. "Your statement is signed. We have it on record. We will file a warrant. We will question those associated with that man." The sheriff looked directly at Elias. "You are under no legal threat for harboring Lila and the children. The law is clear. The paper sent by Luther Cade is not recognized here." Elias released a breath. "Thank you, Sheriff." He looked to Lila. The sheriff stood. Mrs. Monroe, you have my word. I will act. Lila closed her eyes briefly. That is more than I hoped. They left the building together. Outside, the sun felt brighter, the heat a little softer. Josie skipped ahead. Will they come for us again? Lila knelt and hugged her close. If they do, we will have proof. We have this. She tapped her chest gently. Elias reached out to Josie, took her hand. As long as we show up, that is enough. He looked at the sheriff's windows, saw the silhouette of the man who gave them hope. They walked back to the horses. No one spoke for a long stretch. Ellis slept. Josie rode quietly. Lila leaned into Elias. They moved down the trail together. They returned to Dry Hollow at dusk. The sky was painted in soft hues of amber and rose. The ridge felt gentler. The wind carried less dust. Inside the cabin, Elias stacked firewood while Josie settled Ellis in a makeshift cradle beneath a window that faced west. Lila lingered on the porch, her gaze settled on the horizon. She inhaled slow. Lila had made a choice, one not many women dared. She had stood in a courthouse and spoken truth. She had risked shame and retaliation. She had demanded something simple but powerful, a right to be human. Now the ripple of her testimony reached beyond the courthouse doors. That evening, a neighbor came by. Old May Turner. She carried a tin of preserves. She had dark hair streaked with silver and a face lined by sun and work. She knocked softly, then opened the door when Elias stepped aside. Lila did not rise. She stayed where she was, by the fireplace, quiet but steady. May set the tin on the table. She cleared her throat. Miss Monroe, she said, voice low. I heard what you told that judge. Lila nodded. You were brave. May looked at Lila with eyes that carried generations. Some of us have known girls sold off like cattle, May said. They never spoke, so no one knew. Until now. Lila rose slowly and took May's hand. Thank you, Lila said. May squeezed it, then looked at Elias. You did well, Elias. God rest your patience. Elias nodded. May slipped out. No fanfare, just presence. The next morning, Joshua Reed came riding in. He was a rancher from 2 valleys over, early 50s. He had a reputation for fairness. He rode with purpose now. Elias met him near the fence, Reed said. Lila told me what happened. She spoke truth. That takes grit. Elias tightened his hatband. She started it, he said. Reed shifted in his seat. Then we start too. We will bring names to the sheriff. Enough to challenge that debt system. Elias exhaled. Reed continued. It is bigger than just one family. That system trades bodies. We do not let that stand. Josie watched from the porch. She stepped down beside her mother. Reed looked at Josie. That book drawing you made? That is the kind of dream this place needs. Josie smiled faintly. Reed tipped his hat. I will speak at town meeting. Put faces to the filings. Later that day. Lila walked to the small post office in Dry Hollow. She carried her own copy of the affidavit. She pinned it to the bulletin board, outside where others posted news. Then she added a second note. If you know someone taken by debt or sold under false pretense, come forward. Some townsfolk paused to read. Some nodded. Some kept their head down. Lila came back home and found Josie by the fire. I was afraid, she said. She felt safe. Josie said. Lila closed her eyes. I was worried silence would last longer than truth. You spoke, and others will too. Evening came. A group gathered outside by the fence. Quiet voices, shared stories, old wounds, opened for the first time in years. Some spoke names, some spoke only dates, but all had lived it. Elias stood on the porch. He watched Lila among the crowd. She spoke softly, held the hand of a woman whose sister had vanished. Josie sat on the fence rail, Ellis asleep in a sling at Lila's back. A neighbor said, "I remember you from years back. I thought you fled. I did not know they took you." Lila looked straight at her. "They tried," Lila said, "but I found my voice again." The wind lifted. Elias felt something in him shift. Before, he had carried loss. Now he carried something stronger. Hope. Later, as they cleared the table, Elias placed Josie's drawing in the parlor window, a silent signal. May returned with a loaf of fresh bread. No words were spoken. In the soft morning that followed, Elias stood before the small church where the first community meeting was to take place. A posting read, "Town gathering to discuss citizen rights." He held Lila's hand. Josie walked beside them, Ellis in arms. The church door opened. Inside, families sat on benches, worn by years. Elder men leaned forward. Mothers held children. Reverend Cole stood quiet at the front. Elias stepped forward. He spoke with a voice low but steady. "We are here to remember those walked away from those who had no voice, but who still breathed, who still dreamed." Lila stood beside him. She said nothing, but Josie reached up and touched his hand. Across the room, May sat with her head high. Reed stood at the back. They listened. Community members rose to share short stories. Lila handed her affidavit to Reverend Cole. He placed it on the pulpit. One woman spoke. She described how her cousin disappeared after a mining accident. Another man spoke about a young girl taken across the border. No accusations, just truth, shared in low voices, but heard wide. Reed spoke last. "We cannot let greed carve our names from memory. We hold the ledger today." A hush followed. No cheers, no fanfare, just a gathering of hearts joined. Lila looked at Elias. He nodded. Josie squeezed her mother's hand. Elias looked at Ellis. He whispered, "We stay." The first morning of spring came gently to Dry Hollow. The ridgeline glowed soft gold. Snow had vanished from the low brush. Wild sage pushed up from damp soil. The breeze carried the scent of cedar, sweetgrass, and ash long gone. Elias Monroe stood at the edge of the hill near his cabin. The field below stirred with townsfolk. They came not with noise, but quiet steps. They brought chairs, baskets of bread, small hand-carved gifts. They came to witness something simple, something sacred, not a wedding, not a festival, a beginning. Josie placed a plank of pine near the trellis Reed had built. She had scrawled words across it in uneven letters. "Home is when we all stay." Lila stood close by. She cradled Ellis against her chest. The baby slept without fuss. Her eyes followed Josie, but her hand reached toward Elias. He took it. Together, they faced the people, gathered in a half circle around the porch. Sheriff Holt stepped forward. He carried a folded document and a leather satchel. His boots crunched lightly against the earth. "This here," he said, voice deep and clear, "is now recognized by the county, protected land, registered under the names of Elias Monroe and Lila Monroe." He handed the papers to Elias. Lila let out a breath. Her shoulders softened. Elias nodded in thanks. They said nothing more. No need. Reed approached next. He held a piece of cloth, hand-dyed blue. It bore Josie's drawing, embroidered by May Turner herself. A cabin, a tall figure, a woman with long hair, a girl holding flowers, a baby in arms. Beneath them, stitched with care, were Josie's own words. He tied it to the post of the trellis. People moved closer. They formed a full circle. Children stood at the front, fidgeting but quiet. One neighbor boy stepped forward. He carried a jar of river pebbles. He poured them gently around the base of the plank. A girl followed, setting down a bundle of dried lavender. Small offerings, symbols of place. Reed cleared his throat. "We do not raise temples out here," he said. "We raise each other." He stepped back. Silence followed. Then someone began to hum, low and slow. A woman joined in. Soon others followed. A lullaby made of memory, about dust and rivers and waiting. Josie stood between Elias and Lila. She placed one hand on each. Lila looked down and whispered, "This is real." Elias nodded. Together, they closed their eyes. The wind passed through the wild vines above them. Later, in the quiet after, neighbors shared food. Children ran between trees. Josie sat on the porch rail, watching the hills. Ellis slept in a cradle made from hollowed aspen, lined with wool. Inside the cabin, Elias sat at the table. He turned the county papers over in his hands. His thumb ran across the seal. He set them aside. He picked up Josie's drawing, the original one, real family. It said, Lila came in with 2 mugs. She set one beside him, sat down. Neither spoke for a while. Then Elias asked, "Do you believe this will last?" Lila held her mug. "I believe in what we made. That is enough." Josie peeked around the doorframe. "May I come in?" Elias nodded. She ran over and climbed onto his lap. She leaned into his chest. He placed his hand gently on her back. "You okay?" he asked. She looked up. "I feel warm inside." Lila reached across and touched her shoulder. "That is what family does. Outside." Sheriff Holt approached with Reed. Reed carried a folded paper. "We have made a list." Reed said, "Names of families in trouble. Women sold under false contracts. Men buried under debt." Elias took the list. He scanned the names. Some he knew. Some he did not. "These are real people," Elias said. "They are," Reed replied, "but they do not have a voice yet." Elias folded the list, slid it into his pocket. "Then we will speak for them." He looked to Lila. She stood beside him now. She nodded. "We will help." Sheriff Holt tapped his badge, "And the county will listen." They shook hands, not just as neighbors, as allies. The sun drifted lower. Long shadows fell across the porch. Josie watched the sky turn orange, then red. She leaned her head on the arm of Lila. "I like the quiet," she said. "It means peace," Lila whispered. Elias stepped to the edge of the porch. He looked across the field. A breeze lifted the stitched banner Josie had made. It fluttered, then settled. He breathed deep. The air smelled of hope. He turned back toward his family and smiled. The sun came slow over Dry Hollow. The land breathed quiet, gentle, strong. A light wind passed through the hills. It swept the porch. It stirred the wildflowers Josie had gathered the day before. Inside the cabin, Ellis slept beside the hearth. Lila brushed hair from his forehead. Josie sat nearby, drawing shapes on paper with a stick of charcoal. Elias stood near the window. He watched his family. Not the one he had planned long ago. The one he had found. The one he had chosen. He turned to the drawer near the hearth, opened it. Inside lay the old engagement ring, polished clean, wrapped in felt. He picked it up, held it for a long breath, then turned toward the porch. Outside, the sky turned soft gold. Lila stepped out carrying Ellis in her arms. Josie followed, holding her newest drawing, a cabin, 3 tall trees, 4 small hearts drawn near the base. She placed the paper on the porch rail, smoothed it flat. Elias waited by the trellis. Lila met his eyes. She smiled. Small, real. He stepped forward. I did not know what love meant, Elias said. Not until I nearly lost it. Lila looked down, then up again. I thought love ended, she whispered, but you made it begin again. He held out the ring. She reached for it, then paused. You sure? She asked. He nodded, more sure than I have ever been. She took it. He slipped it gently onto her finger. No altar, no music, just this. The sound of the wind, the quiet breath of the baby, the soft whisper of the land. Josie stepped forward. She stood between them. Is this our forever? She asked. Elias knelt to her level. He touched her cheek. It always was, he said. Josie wrapped her arms around both of them. Lila leaned in. They stayed like that, holding, breathing, alive. Later that evening, neighbors gathered again. Nothing fancy, just bread, coffee, laughter. They brought seeds for planting, a baby blanket, a handmade chair for Josie. Lila sat beside Elias on the porch steps. She whispered, "This is more than a home." He nodded. "It is a second chance." Reed stood nearby with the sheriff. He held a ledger, blank. "Names will go in here," he said. "Names of those still missing, still waiting." Elias took it. He placed it on the table beside Josie's drawing. "We will not forget them," he said. Lila pressed her hand over his. "We speak for more than ourselves now." That night, Lila rocked Ellis near the fire. Josie curled on a wool blanket, humming a tune from her mother's old songs. Elias watched them, then walked to the back room. He reached into the rafters, brought down the old daguerreotype, the one of his parents. He hung it beside the frame of Lila from before the fire. Then he added Josie's newest drawing, a final piece. He stepped back, looked at all of it. He exhaled. The next morning, Lila found the wooden box. Inside was the ring, the one from long ago, the one he had kept even when hope was lost. She held it, not to wear, but to remember that even silence can be broken, that even loss can find voice. She walked out to the field. Elias followed. They stood together, shoulder to shoulder. They watched the sun rise, not with fear, but with promise. Josie joined them. Ellis slept on her back, wrapped in cloth. She pointed to the distant ridge. "What is out there?" she asked. Elias answered, "Whatever we are brave enough to build." She smiled. "Let us build it together." Lila placed her hand over his. He squeezed it once, soft, steady, real, in dry hollow. No bells rang, no carriages passed, but something shifted, not in the ground, in the hearts, in the breath, in the dust, and the light. Elias turned to his family. He whispered one last truth. "We stay." And Lila replied, "Always. In a world that moves too fast, it is easy to forget the quiet strength of waiting." This story reminds us that love, when true, does not vanish in fire or silence. It teaches that even after great loss, healing is possible not in grand gestures, but in small acts of care. A hand offered, a name remembered, a door left open. Elias did not rescue a woman. He chose to listen, to stay, to believe. Lila did not seek pity. She found courage to speak when the world tried to silence her. And young Josie, with her drawings and gentle hope, became the heart that tied them all together. We are never too old to begin again, to rebuild, to believe that love, even if buried under years of dust and pain, can still find its way home. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is staying. Thank you for spending time with us today. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video. Share it with someone who still believes in second chances. And do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that echo through the quiet places of the soul. We are Wild West Echoes, where memories live on.